Imagine an ancient human on an icy night. He has no house to protect him, no heater, no winter clothes, and no door to close against the wind. Only harsh cold, a dark sky, and a long night that could kill a human before morning. Back then, cold was not just an annoying feeling. It was a real danger. When the body loses its heat, a person starts to shiver. Then his movement becomes slower. His fingers become heavy, and his mind starts to become confused. And in the end, he may start feeling sleepy. And this is the most dangerous stage, because sleeping in extreme cold could be the last thing a person ever does. But despite all of this, ancient humans did not go extinct. They lived, they hunted, they migrated, and they reached extremely cold regions. So how did they survive? The truth is, their survival was not because of one thing, not just fire, not just animal skins, not just caves. They had a complete system for survival. The first weapon against cold was fire. Fire was not a luxury. It was life. With it, humans warmed themselves, cooked food, dried animal skins, and kept predators away. But starting a fire in ancient times was not easy. There were no lighters, no matches. It needed dry wood, the right stone, a small spark, and long experience. That is why keeping the embers alive was just as important as starting the fire itself. They protected them under the ash, and sometimes carried them with them, because if the fire went out on a cold night, it could mean death. But fire alone was not enough. Humans still had to move, hunt, collect fuel, and search for food. And here came clothing. Humans do not have fur like bears, so they used animal skins and fur. And over time, they made needles from bone. This shows that humans began sewing clothes, not just throwing animal skin over their bodies. And here, everything changed. Loose animal skin lets cold air enter, but sewn clothing traps warm air around the body. And in the cold, this could be the difference between life and death. They likely made head coverings, foot wraps, and clothes made of several layers, because the hands, feet, and face are the first parts affected by cold. If the foot freezes, a person cannot walk, and if he cannot walk, he cannot hunt, he cannot return to the camp, and he cannot escape danger. But even clothing was not enough against the wind. Wind pulls heat from the body very quickly. That is why humans needed shelter. And ancient humans did not always live in caves. Caves were not available everywhere, and some were damp, or dangerous, or far from hunting areas. So humans built shelters from wood, stones, and animal skins. And in some cold regions, they used the bones of large animals, like mammoths. They made a frame from them, then covered it with animal skins to protect themselves from the wind. The shelter did not need to be beautiful. It needed to be small, warm, and protected from the air. And here, we need to pay attention to something dangerous. Wetness was one of their worst enemies, because water pulls heat from the body very fast. If the foot got wet, or the skin, or the fur, the person would be in real danger. That is why drying animal skins near the fire and choosing a dry place to sleep was not a luxury. It was a matter of survival. But cold does not kill through air only. It also kills through hunger. In the cold, the body burns more energy to keep itself warm, so ancient humans needed food that was very rich in energy. And here, animal fat was a treasure. Meat was important, but in the cold, fat was even more important because it gives the body high calories and helps it keep going. That is why hunting large animals was extremely important, like reindeer, bison, wild horses, and mammoths in some regions. One animal was not just food, it was a complete source of life. Meat for eating, fat for energy, skin for clothing and shelters, bones for tools, and tendons for sewing and tying. But hunting in the cold was not easy. They moved over snow, in a harsh environment, facing strong and fast animals. And any injury could be deadly. That is why hunting did not depend on strength only. It depended on planning and the group. One person watched, one person chased, one person blocked the path, and one person carried the spear. They followed animal tracks in the snow. They knew their migration routes, and they waited for the right moment. And here we reach the most important reason for their survival: the group. One person alone in an icy world had a weak chance, but a group meant life. One guarded the fire, one collected fuel, one repaired tools, one prepared animal skins, one hunted, and another took care of the children. This was not a random life. It was a life built on knowledge. How do you start a fire? How do you preserve embers? How do you sew animal skin? How do you build shelter? How do you know a storm is coming? How do you track an animal over snow? Every correct answer increased the chance of survival. Even children needed special protection because they lose heat faster than adults. That is why they stayed near the fire, under animal skins, inside the shelter, and surrounded by the group. And there is an important point about Neanderthals. Neanderthals lived in Europe and Western Asia during very cold periods. Their bodies were shorter, stronger, and more solidly built than modern humans. And this helped them reduce heat loss. But even Neanderthals did not survive with their bodies alone. They needed fire, clothing, shelter, hunting, and cooperation. And this explains the idea. Surviving the cold was not just physical strength. It was intelligence, learning, and cooperation. Humans do not have the fur of a bear, or the fat of a seal, or a body made for snow. But they had the mind. They turned skin into clothing, bone into a needle, fire into life, and the group into a shield against the world. That is why ancient humans survived deadly cold, not because they were stronger than nature, but because they learned how to use nature to survive. In their world, one small mistake could be deadly. If the fire went out, if the foot got wet, if the path was lost, if the hunt failed, if a person slept in an exposed place, every detail could mean the difference between life and death. In the end, ancient humans did not have modern houses, no electricity, and no winter clothes like we have today. But they had the mind. And in a frozen world, the mind was the real difference between survival and disappearance. So when you feel cold and look for a coat or a heater, remember that human ancestors faced deadly cold and still survived because they understood one simple rule. In harsh nature, those who do not adapt disappear, and those who learn survive.